I've never shared this with anyone, not fully, at least. And I'm still not sure if writing it down makes it feel more real or less so. But what happened to me that weekend in the fall of 2019 still haunts me, not in the way nightmares do, but like something unfinished, like something is still out there. It started like most of my solo trips do, a Friday night escape from the city, a cooler full of snacks, and my tent packed into the back of my car. I had found this lightly trafficked trailhead on a backpacking forum, nestled in the mountains of eastern Oregon. It was a place called Ridge Trail, though I'm not sure if that's its official name or just what hikers call it. A narrow dirt road got me there, no cell service, no ranger station, no real signage. Just the way I liked it. I parked, locked up, slung my bag over my shoulder, and headed out. The trail wound upward for about 5 miles before leveling off into a flat clearing with just enough room for a few tents. It overlooked a steep drop on one side and was bordered by dense pine trees on the other 3. I set up camp, built a modest fire, cooked some ramen, and watched the sky dim until the trees swallowed the light. It was quiet. Peaceful. That first night passed uneventfully. The wind rustled through the trees, a few branches cracked in the distance, but nothing alarming. I woke up early the next morning, stretched, ate some jerky, and decided to explore beyond the clearing. I followed a game trail through the pines for maybe half a mile when I saw something that made me stop, a tent. Not mine. Not new. It was faded blue, sagging in the middle, and looked like it had been there for a while, weathered, dirty, one side partially collapsed. I called out, just a simple hello, no answer. I approached slowly, and as I got closer, I noticed the tent had no gear outside. No fire pit, no food wrappers, nothing to suggest someone was actively camping. I crouched and peeked inside. Empty. No sleeping bag, no backpack, just a thick layer of pine needles and a single boot. Just one. It felt wrong. Like I'd stepped into something that wasn't meant to be seen. I backed away and returned to my campsite, feeling uneasy. The rest of the day I tried to shake it off. I hiked around, took some photos, even read a little. But the image of that tent wouldn't leave me. It was like it had been staged, deliberately abandoned, yet too clean to have been truly forgotten. As night fell, I built another fire. The woods around me grew dark again, and I let the flames hypnotize me, trying not to think about the tent. Sometime around 10 p.m. I heard it. Voices. Distant. Muffled. Not quite close, but not far either. They were coming from deeper in the woods, the direction of that tent. I sat up straight, the hairs on my arms rising. I turned off my headlamp and just listened. The voices continued, slow, deliberate speech. Not shouting. Not laughing. Just talking. Except I couldn't make out any words. It didn't even sound like English. After maybe 2 or 3 minutes, they stopped. Just like that. No footsteps. No rustling. Just silence. I didn't sleep much that night. The next morning, I decided I was going to leave. Something about this place no longer felt right. I packed slowly, trying to calm myself. But then I noticed something. On a tree near my tent, scratched into the bark, were 4 letters, STAY. The cuts looked fresh. There were even small curls of bark on the ground beneath them. I stared at it for a long time. It didn't make sense. I had been out here alone. I would have heard someone carving it. Would ve seen a flashlight, heard movement. Something. I nearly bolted down the trail right then, but a mix of fear and confusion rooted me in place. I decided I'd just go slower. Stay calm. No need to panic. By noon I had my pack ready. As I took one last look around the campsite, something caught my eye down the trail. Maybe 30 feet away, partially hidden behind a tree, was a person. I froze. They were facing away from me, standing completely still. Wearing a dark hoodie and jeans. No gear, no backpack. Just standing there. "Hello," I called out. No response. They didn't move. I took a step forward, heart hammering. "Are you okay? Do you need help?" Still nothing. I blinked and they were gone. I ran to the spot. No one. No footprints. Just the quiet whisper of wind through the trees. I sprinted back to my pack and started walking down the trail. Fast. Focused. I just needed to get to the car. It was only a 5-mile hike, downhill most of the way. I could do that in under 2 hours. But the forest didn't feel right. The birds were gone. Even the wind had stopped. The deeper I went, the more oppressive the air became, like it was pressing in on me. About halfway down, I saw something that stopped me cold. Another tent. It was the same faded blue as before. Same collapsed side. Same location in the trail, just ahead of me. No way. No possible way. I had hiked away from that spot. I hadn't turned around. I approached it again, heart pounding. This time, the boot inside was gone. In its place was a small notebook. I hesitated, then reached in and grabbed it. The cover was soft with moisture, the pages curling. I flipped it open. The handwriting inside was jagged, frantic. The same sentence repeated over and over, "Don't look behind you." Over and over. Dozens of times. Then the last page, "They hate being seen." That was it. I dropped the notebook and ran. No more careful steps. No more checking the trail. Just ran. I swear I could hear breathing behind me. Not footsteps breathing. Wet, low, steady. I didn't look back. I didn't want to know. I don't remember the last mile of that hike. I was running on adrenaline and terror. All I know is that I didn't stop until I saw my car through the trees. I fumbled the keys, nearly dropped them, but got in and locked the doors. I sat there, gripping the wheel, breathing hard. Then I saw something in my rearview mirror. In the middle of the trail, just at the edge of the woods, was the blue tent. It hadn't been there before. I didn't sleep for 2 nights after I got home. I kept checking my windows, thinking I'd see that tent in the backyard or in my driveway. But nothing. I still have the notebook. I don't know why I kept it. Maybe to prove to myself that it really happened. I haven't gone camping since. I don't think I ever will again. Somewhere out there, deep in the pines, something is watching. Something that sets up scenes. That plays with your sense of direction. That doesn't like being seen. And I don't know if it wanted me gone. Or if it wanted me to come back. I moved into the basement unit of a brownstone in Brooklyn in October of 2021. It was cheap, too cheap for the area, but I was between jobs and desperate. The Craigslist listing just said, "Studio apartment, private entrance, $850 month." That alone was enough to make me schedule a visit. The landlord was an older woman named Marie who lived upstairs. She had this kind of weary energy about her, like someone who'd seen too much but didn't want to talk about any of it. She barely gave me a tour, just handed me the keys and said, "Don't leave food out. Rats in this part of the city are bold." The unit itself was fine. Small, a little musty, with tiny rectangular basement windows at the ceiling that barely let in light. The walls were a weird, patchy gray, and the radiator made unsettling noises every couple of hours, like a dying animal. Still, it was mine. The first few days were uneventful. I unpacked, got groceries, sent out job applications. At night I watched shows on my laptop until I fell asleep. Then, about a week in, I heard footsteps. That first night, I remember checking my watch. It was 2:13 a.m. The sound was faint but distinct, slow, heavy steps directly beneath me. At first I assumed it was just the upstairs neighbor coming down the stairs. But it wasn't he above me, it was underneath. Which didn't he make sense. I got up and walked around my studio. There wasn't any floor below mine. My unit was the basement. I tried to shake it off. Old pipes, the building settling, whatever excuse I could come up with. But the footsteps came again the next night. Same time. Same slow, deliberate pacing. They always lasted about 5 minutes. No other noise, just the walking. By the fourth night, I started recording it on my phone. I played it back the next day. The mic picked it up clear as day, footsteps, almost rhythmic. Like someone pacing in circles under my bed. Then came the whispering. I don't know how else to describe it. One night, as I lay in bed trying to ignore the footsteps, I heard something else. Faint, behind the wall near my headboard. Words I couldn't make out. A voice, maybe two. Just beneath the threshold of understanding, like someone murmuring into a pillow from the other side of the wall. I sat up, pressed my ear to the plaster. It stopped. I turned off all the lights, sat in total darkness, and waited. After a few minutes, the whispering started again. Closer this time. I could feel it vibrating in the walls. Then I heard breathing. Not mine. Not from outside. From inside the apartment. Shallow. Wet. Strained. I slept with the lights on after that. I asked Marie about it the next morning. She just looked tired. She stirred her coffee and said, "Old buildings do strange things. You'll get used to it." I wanted to ask more, but she shut down the conversation with a flat stare that said, "Don't." The days passed, but the nights grew worse. One night, around 3 a.m., I was awakened by a sudden crash in the kitchen. I jumped up and found that one of the cabinet doors had swung open and a single mug had fallen out shattered on the floor. I hadn't even touched that cabinet since moving in. Another time, I found my closet door open, with all my clothes pulled halfway out and piled on the floor. It wasn't rats. It wasn't wind. Then came the night I found the hatch. I was vacuuming for the first time since moving in, finally trying to tidy up when I hit something hard under the old shaggy rug in the middle of the room. I pulled the rug back and saw a rectangle edged into the wooden floorboards. Rough, maybe 3 feet by 3 feet. A thin seam formed the shape of a trapdoor, with rusted nails hammered into all 4 corners. No handle. No latch. Just a faint groove where it could open. My stomach sank. I stared at it for a long time before texting a friend, something dumb like, "You ever find a secret door in your apartment?" Then I got a hammer from the kitchen and started prying the nails loose. It took half an hour. I was shaking the whole time, but curiosity beat fear until I lifted the wood. A cold, moldy draft hit me in the face. There was a short wooden staircase, maybe 10 steps down, ending in complete darkness. I grabbed my phone, turned on the flashlight, and started descending. At the bottom was a narrow room with brick walls. It smelled like wrought and iron. The air felt thick, like the space hadn't been touched in years. On the walls were papers. Hundreds of sheets, some yellow with age, some newer. All tacked or nailed into the bricks. At first I thought it was junk, old flyers or receipts, but then I read them. They were journal entries. Each one had a date and someone's handwriting. Some neat, some barely legible. March 12, 2009. It's under the bed again. April 7, 2010. I can't sleep. The walls keep whispering. I tried earplugs. December 3, 2011. Something in the ceiling. Marie won't answer my calls. It went on and on. Dozens of different names. Years apart. All describing the same things. Footsteps. Breathing. Whispers. Scratches in the walls. And then, at the very center of the far wall, surrounded by older entries, was a single sheet of paper. The handwriting was mine. April 14, 2022. I need to get out. I think it knows I found the room, but that didn't make sense. It was October. April was 6 months away. I stepped back. My ears rang. My pulse thudded in my throat. I snapped a photo of the wall and bolted up the stairs. That night, the sounds came earlier. The footsteps started around 10 p.m. and didn't stop. They circled the bed, paused by the bathroom, moved into the closet. I didn't sleep. I just sat against the wall, holding a kitchen knife and staring at the floor. At some point, maybe around 4 a.m., the light bulb overhead flickered and popped. The room went black. In that darkness, the breathing returned. So close. So close I could almost feel it on my skin. I left the next morning. I didn't pack everything. Just stuffed a duffel with essentials and left the key on the counter. Marie didn't even try to stop me. A week later, I checked the listing again. The Craigslist ad was back up. Same photo. Same price. Just one line in the description had changed. No longer available for showings after April 2022. I still have the photo I took in the room. My handwriting is on the wall, plain as day. Even friends who've seen my notes before say it's clearly mine. But I never wrote it. I never went back down there again. I don't know if that basement exists in a normal timeline. Maybe it's some kind of trap, like it loops people through, copying their thoughts, their fears. Or maybe it just waits until you notice it. Until you open it. Sometimes I still hear footsteps in my new apartment. I tell myself it's just upstairs neighbors. But I sleep with the lights on now. Always. And I never ignore strange sounds anymore. I'm a freelance graphic designer. Most of my clients are on the West Coast, and I live in Chicago, which means I usually end up working weird hours to match their time zones. A couple of months ago, I started using this 24-hour co-working space downtown. Sleek, modern, high-speed Wi-Fi, endless coffee. It was usually bustling during the day, filled with startup types and laptop nomads. But at night, it emptied out. By midnight, it was dead quiet, just me and maybe the occasional insomniac coder in a corner booth. Which is exactly how I liked it. No distractions, no small talk. Just me, my headphones, and my work. It started on a Thursday. I had just finished a batch of client logos around 2 a.m. and leaned back in my chair to stretch. I took my earbuds out, intending to grab more coffee from the kitchen area when I noticed something strange. One of the conference rooms had its lights on. That wasn't weird by itself, sometimes people forgot to turn them off, but this was the smallest room, Maple, a tight little glass-walled cube with a single table and a monitor. What caught my attention was the flickering of a screen inside. I paused. Someone had left a laptop open. I could just barely see the screen from where I sat. It was playing a slideshow, white background, black text. I walked over slowly, figuring someone had left a presentation running. The conference room door was slightly ajar. I pushed it open gently. The laptop wasn't one of the shared ones. It was a MacBook Space Gray, clean, and fairly new. The screen read, "Slide 3 of 17, we are watching you." I stared at it for a moment, confused. The next slide auto-advanced. "We see how you work. We know how you think." There was no mouse movement. No hand on the trackpad. The slideshow kept progressing on its own. "You want to remember this correctly." I stepped back. Goosebumps crept up my arms. I checked the hallway. No one. I looked up at the security camera in the corner. Just a little black dome blinking steadily. I shut the conference room door, trying to convince myself it was a prank. Someone messing around. Maybe one of the developers from upstairs with a weird sense of humor. But as I walked back to my desk, I saw something else. The seat I'd been working in earlier, it was still warm, like someone had just been there. And the screen on my laptop was active, even though I'd locked it. I stopped cold. I always locked my screen. Always. I stepped closer. The cursor was hovering over a folder I hadn't opened, Client Concepts, Redraft, and inside it, there were 4 new files I didn't recognize. Each one was named like I would name them: concept1_v2.psd, revised_logo_alt.ai, but I hadn't touched that folder since last week. I opened one. It was good. Really good. A logo variation I would been proud of. Clean. Balanced. Professional. But I hadn't made it. I double-checked the timestamps. All 4 were saved between 1:42 and 1:56 a.m. That's when I'd been in the kitchen. I suddenly felt cold. I opened the browser and logged into the building's co-working portal. It had a room access log where you could see which fob unlocked which room and when. My account showed 1:41 a.m. exited workstation area. 1:43 a.m. conference room Maple accessed. 1:55 a.m. workstation area re-entered. But I hadn't gone into that room. Not then. I logged into the internal security page, something the community manager had shown me once during a glitch. It showed the last 6 hours of footage from the main work area. I scrubbed through until I found myself standing up at 1:41, walking toward the kitchen. Then I saw something impossible. Maybe 10 seconds after I disappeared out of frame, I walked back into the shot. Or someone who looked exactly like me. Same jacket. Same haircut. Same shoes. I sat down at my station. Plugged in a USB. Opened Illustrator. Worked silently for about 10 minutes, typing, adjusting, designing. Then got up and walked away. I watched the footage 4 more times. There was no glitch. No camera jump. Just 2 versions of me, passing like ghosts. I shut the laptop and packed up. I didn't even log out of the portal. As I walked toward the exit, I glanced at the conference room again. The light was off now. The MacBook was closed. The chair had been pushed in. I left the building without looking back. That night, I barely slept. The next day, I didn't go in. Or the day after. But then the emails started. From my own email. Sent to clients I hadn't talked to in weeks. Here are the updated designs we discussed. Please see the attached draft and let me know what you think. Attachments included PDFs and PSDs I didn't create. But they looked like my style, perfectly my style. Same layers, same naming conventions, same color schemes. Except, they were better. More refined. Almost too perfect. Clients loved them. I started getting thank you messages for work I didn't do. One even paid an invoice I never sent. The kicker, I couldn't access any of those files on my machine. They weren't in my cloud. Not in Dropbox, Google Drive, anywhere. They only existed in those sent emails. One night, I got a DM on Instagram. No username. Just a string of characters. It read, "Working late tonight." No photo. No replies. The Cower King app on my phone buzzed a minute later. "Your workstation has been reserved. 11 p.m. to 4 a.m. room, Maple." I didn't book that. I deleted the app. The next night, my phone vibrated again. This time, a calendar event had been added. No alert, no notification until it popped up. Design session with you. 1 a.m. ID had enough. I went back to the space the following night just to retrieve my things from the locker ID left behind. When I entered the building, everything was dark. No staff. No other users. Just dim emergency lights and the hum of the vending machines. I walked to my locker, grabbed my sketch pads and headphones. As I turned to leave, the overhead lights snapped on just above the Maple room. I turned. Through the glass, I saw someone sitting inside. Back to me. Working. His hand moved the mouse with a familiar rhythm. His foot bounced the same way mine does when I'm focused. I walked closer, slowly. He turned slightly. Enough to catch the profile. It was me. Exactly me. He didn't react. Just clicked through screens, adjusting artboards. I took a step back. Then the MacBook on the desk turned toward me. The webcam was active. The screen displayed a live feed of me, standing outside the room, looking in. Then the screen flashed white and showed words in black font, "You can go now. We've got it from here." I ran. That was 3 weeks ago. Since then, I've received 5 emails from my own address. All design files. All brilliant. All attached to auto-forwarded messages thanking me for my professionalism and speed. My bank account is still getting deposits. Clients still think I'm working. The weirdest part, a part of me wants to go back. Just once. Just to watch. To see what it is making. But I won't. I've changed all my passwords. Got a new phone. I even moved. But the files keep coming. The designs keep getting better. And sometimes, when I open a new Illustrator file, I feel like someone else already been there, nudged the grid lines, adjusted the kerning, set the layers just right. I don't think I'm alone anymore. I don't think I ever was. I was driving through Nevada's desert late one night in September 2018, headed back from a conference in California. The sun had set hours ago, and the long stretch of Route 17 ahead was barely illuminated by my car's headlights. The road was endless, flat and straight, surrounded by miles of dark desert on either side, the kind of vast emptiness that makes you feel like you're alone on the planet. I hadn't planned to stop, but after 10 hours behind the wheel, I was exhausted. My eyelids kept drooping despite the coffee I'd chugged earlier. About 20 miles past the last gas station, I spotted it, a small, old-fashioned motel with a flickering neon sign. It read Sundown Motel, the paint peeling and the letters half burnt out, but the vacancy light was glowing. From a distance, the building looked like it hadn't been updated since the 70s. The parking lot was cracked, and weeds grew through the asphalt, but the flickering neon promised one thing: a place to rest. I pulled in and parked next to a single dusty pickup truck. The front desk was inside a small cabin lit with a single swinging light bulb. The door creaked as I pushed it open. Behind the counter stood an old man, maybe in his late 60s, wearing a faded cowboy hat and a grim expression. His eyes seemed almost too alert, scanning me like a predator sizing up prey. "Evening," I said. "Room for one?" He nodded slowly. "Sure. We got one room left. Number 12. I handed over my ID and a credit card. He barely looked at either before sliding a key across the counter. "Watch your step," he muttered. His voice was low, gravelly. The lobby smelled of stale smoke and something else I couldn't place, maybe old wood and forgotten memories. Before I left, I glanced around. The walls were plastered with old black and white photographs. Faded images of smiling families, couples, and lone travelers posing outside the motel. I noticed something odd: many of the photos had dates from the 50s, 60s, and 70s, but a few were dated much later than 90s. I shook the thought away and walked to room 12. The door was surprisingly heavy. Inside, the air was thick and musty. The furniture was old: a sagging bed, a wooden dresser, and a small table with a rotary phone. The wallpaper was peeling in corners, revealing cracked plaster underneath. I dropped my bags, turned on the lamp, and sat on the bed, trying to relax. My phone had no signal, which wasn't surprising this far out in the desert. Minutes later, I picked up the receiver of the rotary phone. Just as I was about to hang up, the line clicked and there was silence. No dialing tone, no static, just silence. Then the line went dead. I shrugged it off and decided to take a quick shower. Afterwards, I lay back down and closed my eyes. Almost immediately, the phone rang again. I answered cautiously. Nothing. No breathing. No voice. Just silence. Then the line clicked again. I tried to convince myself it was a prank, a crossed wire, or interference. But the calls kept coming every 30 minutes, always silent. I spent the night half listening, half dozing off, until the sound of footsteps outside my door jolted me awake. I peered through the peephole but saw nothing. The footsteps stopped abruptly. The silence returned, thick and heavy. At dawn, I left the room and went down to the lobby to get some coffee. The old man was nowhere to be found. I waited for a few minutes until he appeared, carrying a cracked ceramic mug filled with what smelled like burnt coffee. "Did you sleep all right?" he asked, eyes glinting oddly. I mentioned the phone calls and footsteps. He smiled thinly. "Old building quirks," he said. "Sometimes the past lingers." His words sent a chill down my spine. Before I left for breakfast, I took one last glance at the lobby wall, the photos I'd noticed the night before. My eyes caught something unsettling. There was a photo of a man standing beside the motel sign. The image was grainy but unmistakable. The man's face was mine. The date below read, 1996. My heart pounded. I grabbed the photo and looked more closely. The man wore clothes from that era: high-waisted jeans, a tucked-in shirt, a denim jacket. My own face stared back, younger but unmistakable. I felt dizzy. I asked the man behind the counter, but he just shrugged. We've had a lot of guests. You look familiar. I didn't press it. I rushed back to my room to grab my things and leave. Outside, I started my car, but the engine sputtered and died. I tried again. Nothing. Panic began to build. I checked my phone: no signal. The sun was rising, but the desert was vast and empty, no gas stations for miles. I ran back inside to ask the old man for help. He was sitting at the lobby desk, his hat tipped low. "You can't leave," he said simply. "What do you mean?" I demanded. He sighed. "This place. It doesn't let you go. Not once you've checked in." I backed away. The lights flickered and the lobby transformed. Suddenly, I was no longer alone. All the people in the photos, families, couples, travelers, they were there. They surrounded me, their faces blank but eerily familiar. And they all looked like me. I turned to run. Outside, the neon sign buzzed, "No vacancy." But below it, a smaller sign glowed faintly. It read, "Forever occupied." It was nearly midnight when I boarded the 151 bus heading north through downtown Chicago. I'd missed my earlier train and figured the bus would be the next best way to get back to my apartment in Edgewater. The night was damp and quiet. The rain had stopped, but the streets still shimmered under the streetlights, slick and reflective. The bus was nearly empty. Just me and a man sitting in the very back row. He was hunched over, wearing a dark coat with the collar pulled up. A knit beanie shadowed most of his face. He didn't move when I got on. Didn't glance up. Just sat there, motionless. I took a seat near the middle, close to the back door. The bus hummed as it pulled away from the curb. I pulled out my phone and popped in my earbuds. But as the city passed by outside, something started to feel wrong. At first, it was subtle. The next few stops were familiar enough, but then the names of the stops began to change. I'd ridden this route 100 times. I knew every landmark, every cross street. But now, instead of Belmont or Foster, the overhead screen said, Franklin Gate, Morrill Lane, Hickory Cross. Places I'd never heard of. I glanced outside, hoping to get my bearings. But the buildings looked old. Not in the typical Chicago way. These were almost vintage, like something out of a 1940s postcard. Narrow brick facades, gas lamps, storefronts with painted glass windows that looked untouched by time. No pedestrians. No cars. Just the quiet hiss of the bus tires against wet pavement. I pulled out my phone. No signal. The date on the lock screen read, Tuesday, March 7, 1973. I blinked. Then checked the calendar app. Same thing. 1973. From the back of the bus, the man stirred. He leaned forward. I felt it before I saw it, the shift in the air, like someone breathing down the back of my neck. Then, he spoke. A low whisper. Garbled. Almost a chant. I pulled out my earbuds. "I'm sorry, what?" I asked, turning slightly. He was still in the shadows, face obscured. He said it again. Louder this time. The words didn't make sense. It sounded like English. Twisted, like hearing your own voice underwater. But the tone was unmistakable. It wasn't a warning. It was a reminder. I stood up. Walked to the driver. Hey, where are we? The driver didn't respond. He didn't even move. His hands gripped the wheel, eyes forward. Frozen. I turned to pull the stop cord. The bell didn't ring. Instead, the bus lights flickered. And when they came back on, the bus was full. Every seat taken. But it was silent. No one moved. No one breathed. And every single face was mine. Dozens of versions of me, staring back. Some older. Some younger. Some with scars. Some with tears streaming down their cheeks. All of them watching. The man in the back stood up. And this time, I saw his face. It was mine, too. But hollow. Eyes sunken. Mouth stretched in a grim, knowing smile. He whispered, "You missed your stop." Then everything went black. I woke up the next morning in my bed. Phone on the nightstand. March 8, 2025. But every time I close my eyes, I still feel the rumble of that bus beneath me. And sometimes, just before I fall asleep, I hear the bell ring. And I see them. All of me. Still watching. I booked the farmhouse on a whim. I'd been burned out for months, design work, deadlines, notifications, the endless blur of digital life. So when I found this Airbnb listing titled "Quiet Countryside Escape, Full House, No Neighbors for Miles," something about it just felt peaceful. The photos showed an old white farmhouse nestled in the Tennessee hills. Wooden porch, cozy interior, antique furniture. It had that lived-in but lovingly restored look. The reviews were few but glowing, exactly what I needed. Felt like stepping back in time. Would stay again. I packed light, just clothes, books, and my camera. I planned to spend a week reading, walking through fields, maybe finally sleeping through the night. The drive out was long and winding, but the landscape was beautiful. Rolling hills, thick woods, and not another soul for miles. Just like the ad promised. When I arrived, the house looked exactly like the pictures. Maybe a little dustier, but charming in its way. A rocking chair on the porch creaked in the wind. The key was in the flower pot, just like the host said. Inside, everything had a faded warmth to it. Floral wallpaper, old rugs, yellowed lace curtains. No TV. Spotty cell service. I felt like I'd stepped into a different decade. The first day was perfect. I made tea, walked around the fields, took some photos of the barn out back. That night, I sat on the porch wrapped in a blanket and listened to the wind in the trees. Then, on the second night, I found the first drawing. It was under the bed. I was picking up a sock I'd dropped when I noticed a corner of paper sticking out. I tugged it free. It was a child's drawing. Crayons on yellowed paper. A crude stick figure family stood in front of a house. Their faces were all just red circles with black dots for eyes. Smiling mouths. The house looked exactly like the one I was in. At first, I smiled. Must have belonged to a previous guest. Maybe the owners had kids. But then I found another one. Tucked into the closet under a stack of extra towels. A single figure this time, drawn in heavy crayon. Red, messy lines all around it. The word "mommy" was written above it in shaky letters. I felt uneasy. Later that night, as I lay in bed, I kept thinking I heard scratching. Not mice. Not the wind. Scratching. Inside the walls. I told myself it was nothing. Old houses creak. Things settle. The third day, I started noticing more drawings. Behind the couch cushions. Inside a drawer in the kitchen. Wedged in the corner of the bookshelf behind a row of faded cookbooks. All drawn in the same hand. All old, wrinkled paper. Some were stick figures. Others were more detailed. Faces with two white eyes, houses with black windows and something standing in them. A dog with a stitched-up mouth. And then I found the one that made me freeze. It was taped behind a mirror in the upstairs hallway. It was a picture of me. Not a stick figure, an actual attempt at a portrait. Same glasses, same green hoodie I'd worn my first night here. It was crude, but undeniably me. Underneath it was scrawled, "New friend." I backed away from the mirror. Suddenly the quiet felt oppressive. Like the house was holding its breath. I decided to leave the next morning. That night, I slept poorly. Kept waking up thinking I heard footsteps downstairs. Once, I swore I heard a voice humming. A child's voice. In the morning, I started packing. As I carried my duffel down the stairs, I noticed something odd. A section of the wall beneath the staircase looked different. Like it had been painted over more recently. I set my bag down and tapped the wall. Hollow. A door. There was no handle. But there was a small notch, like a finger pull. I hesitated, then pulled. The panel creaked open, revealing a narrow set of stairs leading down into darkness. No light switch. I used the flashlight on my phone and descended slowly. The air was colder down there. Damp. The smell of old earth and mildew hit me immediately. The stairs opened into a small stone-walled room like a root cellar, but deeper. The ceiling was low. The walls were covered in something. Drawings. Hundreds of them. Taped, pinned, and nailed into the stone. Children's drawings, just like the ones I'd found. But these were different. Each one depicted a person. A guest. A man with a beard and a suitcase. A woman reading on the porch. A couple smiling at dinner. And all of them were labeled in the same childish handwriting. Mr. Tom, 2002. Miss Ellie, 2009. The Brothers, 2014. I stepped closer. The ink had faded on some, but others were fresh. And at the far end of the room, pinned dead center on a beam of wood, was a new one. My face. Drawn in crayon. Labeled, "The Man with Glasses, 2024. I ran. I didn't bother closing the panel. I grabbed my bag and ran out the front door, not even locking it. I drove like a maniac down the winding roads, barely stopping for signs. Once I got cell service again, I pulled over and called the AirB support line. After 20 minutes of hold music and transfers, someone finally answered. I gave them the listing ID and the hostess name. They told me the listing didn't exist. I repeated it. Spelled it out. Still nothing. I checked the app. My reservation history had no record of the farmhouse. My messages with the host were gone. I checked my credit card. No charge from AirB. Nothing. It was like I'd never booked the place. I checked the photos I'd taken. A few of the fields, the porch. But none from inside. Nothing from the drawing room. No photos of the door under the stairs. Just one new photo I didn't remember taking. It was me, sleeping. Taken from the doorway of the bedroom. There was no EXIF data. No timestamp. Just a file named friend.jpg. I never thought a routine trip to the gym would mess with my head like this. It was just after 8 p.m. on a Wednesday. The downtown 24-hour chain gym where I worked out was nearly empty, practically a ghost town. I had just wrapped up a long day at the office, feeling drained, and decided to squeeze in a workout. The gym was a refuge of sorts for me, a place to push physical limits and leave work stress behind. Walking into the locker room, the air smelled of disinfectant mixed with damp towels. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, flickering slightly in the corners. The only sound besides my footsteps was the distant clink of weights dropping from the empty weight room. I dropped my bag on a bench and headed toward the showers. As I peeled off my shirt, I noticed something odd, faint footsteps echoing somewhere nearby. But the locker room was supposed to be empty except for me. Shrugging it off, I stepped into a stall, letting the warm water wash over me. But the footsteps kept coming, slow and steady, pacing behind the row of shower stalls. And then a soft humming, a melody I couldn't quite place. It sounded almost like someone singing to themselves, a gentle lullaby. I froze, heart pounding. "Hello," I called out, but the only reply was the steady drip of water from the shower head. I finished quickly, grabbed a towel, and went to dry off. That's when I noticed the mirror. In the fogged glass, I could see myself towel drying my hair. But behind me, another silhouette stood perfectly still. A shadowy figure, the shape of a man, but featureless and dark against the steamed glass. I spun around, but there was no one. The locker room was empty. Shaking my head, I moved to my locker to grab my clothes. That's when I saw it. A wet towel draped over my locker door. It wasn't mine, or at least, I was sure I hadn't left one there. Curiously, a name was embroidered on the towel in faded white letters. It was my name. Beneath it, a date was stitched, yesterday's date. I froze. I hadn't come to the gym yesterday. I grabbed the towel, feeling its damp weight in my hands. My name stared back at me like a cold accusation. The humming started again, soft and low, coming from the shadows behind the lockers. I didn't want to look, but I couldn't help it. The mirror caught my eye again. This time, the figure was closer, just inches behind me. And when I moved my head, the figure didn't. Instead, it smiled. A slow, deliberate smile that sent chills down my spine. I bolted for the door, my heart hammering. The footsteps followed me now, not soft, but loud, thudding in rhythm with my racing pulse. I pushed open the exit door and burst into the empty gym. No one was there. No footsteps. No humming. Just silence. I didn't stop running until I was outside, gasping in the cold night air. I never went back. Sometimes, late at night, I still hear that lullaby humming in my dreams, and when I look in the mirror, I swear I see someone standing just behind me, smiling. It was a little past 1:30 a.m. when I pulled off the empty highway. I'd been driving for hours through the back roads of southern Illinois, trying to make it to my cousin's wedding the next morning. My GPS had long since stopped giving useful directions, lost somewhere between dead zones and outdated maps, but I wasn't too worried. The road was quiet, the night calm. And I was starving. So when I saw the flickering red and yellow glow of an old fast food sign rising in the distance, it felt like salvation. Sunny Burger. I'd never heard of it, but the neon open 24 hours sign buzzed reassuringly in the night air. The parking lot was empty, save for a beat-up sedan parked out front, and the building looked like it hadn't been updated since 1998. Didn't matter. I just needed food. I pulled into the drive-through lane and rolled down my window. "Welcome to Sunny Burger. Please place your order whenever you're ready," a voice crackled through the old speaker. I leaned out slightly. "Yeah, can I just get a double cheeseburger, fries, and a large Coke?" There was a long pause. Then a different voice came on, slower, softer, almost like someone whispering just behind me. "Is that still your favorite, Daniel?" I froze. I hadn't said my name. The voice had changed. It was lower now. Gravelly, almost familiar, like someone I'd spoken to a long time ago but couldn't quite place. What I replied, my voice tighter than I meant it to be. A soft chuckle came through the speaker. "Sorry. Got you confused with someone else." "Right." I shook it off. Maybe they'd pulled my info from the card reader. Maybe I'd been there before and forgot. Still, my skin crawled a little as I pulled forward to the first window. It was empty. No one at the register. No light inside. The flickering monitor beside the window displayed nothing but static. I pulled up to the second window. Still no one. The sliding glass pane was half open, and a paper bag sat waiting on the sill. No receipt stapled, no drink, no one in sight. "Hello," I called out. Silence. I hesitated, then grabbed the bag. It was heavier than I expected. I peeked inside. No burger. No fries. No Coke. Just a stack of yellowed paper, folded and rubber banded together. Dozens of pages, maybe more. I pulled them out. The first page had my full name, birth date, address, even the apartment number I'd just moved into 2 months ago. The second page listed my high school, then college, past employers, every job I'd ever held. Then it got weirder. Page after page, lists of purchases, texts I'd sent, emails I barely remembered writing. A schedule for tomorrow accurate down to the minute. 7:12 a.m. wakes up. 7:38 a.m. enters shower. 7:51 a.m. texts cousin Amu. I dropped the papers, heart thudding. I looked up. The lights inside the store had flickered on. All the employees, at least 10 of them, stood perfectly still behind the counter. None of them moved. None of them blinked. Just lined up in the yellow-tinted light, all staring directly at me. One of them, a woman near the middle, raised her hand slowly and waved. Her smile never touched her eyes. I put the car in reverse and slammed on the gas, tires screeching as I backed out of the drive-through lane. I almost hit the curb but managed to correct and peel out onto the road. As I sped off, I glanced into the rear-view mirror. The store had gone dark again. Nothing but that flickering neon sign. Open 24 hours. Back on the road, I tried to calm myself. Told myself it had to be a prank. Someone messing with me. Maybe identity theft, maybe worse. But then I realized I still had the bag in the passenger seat. The pages. I needed to check them again, try to make sense of it. I pulled over onto a dirt shoulder under an old highway overpass. My headlights cut through the mist. I grabbed the top page. The timestamp now read 1:41 a.m. parked under bridge. Flips page. I stared at it, my fingers numb. Then I heard it. The speaker crackle. Coming from inside my car. No, it wasn't my car. It was behind me. I turned around slowly. There, standing just beyond the reach of my brake lights, was one of the employees. The woman. Still smiling. Still waving. Except now, she wasn't behind a counter. She was on the road. I slammed the car into gear and drove, faster than before, not daring to look back. Eventually, I found a gas station with working lights and people inside. I threw the bag into a dumpster and stayed there till dawn, sipping bad coffee under flickering fluorescents and pretending everything made sense. The next morning, I checked online. There was no Sunny Burger listed anywhere within 50 miles. No photos, no Yelp reviews, nothing on Google Maps. Just an old blog post from 2007 about a Sunny Burger that had burned down in the 90s after a grease fire killed several overnight staff. I don't take back roads anymore. And I never order from drive-thrus after dark. But sometimes, when I pass a speaker and hear the static hum, I swear I catch the edge of a whisper, "Is that still your favorite, Daniel?" It started with a mirror. I wasn't looking for one, not really. I stopped by this massive weekend flea market on the outskirts of town, the kind of place where vendors set up under creaky tents and sell anything from rusted tools to vintage postcards. I just moved into a new apartment a few weeks earlier. It wasn't much, one bedroom, 4th floor, not a lot of natural light, but it was mine. And I figured a full-length mirror would make the room feel bigger, maybe a little more alive. That's when I saw it. Leaning against a vendor's dusty truck bed was a tall, antique mirror. The frame was ornate, carved with swirling floral patterns and faded gold accents. A small brass plate at the bottom read, "Leclerc & Sons, 1904. It wasn't in great shape, the glass was slightly warped, edges tinged with age, but it had a charm I couldn't ignore. The vendor, an older man in a flannel shirt, said he'd throw it in for $20. I took it home. The mirror fit nicely against the far wall of my bedroom, right across from my bed. At night, I'd see the soft reflection of my lamp glow, books stacked neatly, my coat hanging on the door. It gave the room a cozy kind of symmetry. But then, things started to feel off. The first morning I noticed it, I assumed I was still half asleep. I woke up and looked into the mirror, like I always did, just checking that I didn't look like a total disaster. But something in the reflection caught my eye. In the corner of the room, the far left corner behind me, was a chair. A wooden rocking chair. Old, chipped white paint, delicate curved arms. Thing is, I didn't own a rocking chair. I turned around immediately. Nothing there. I looked back into the mirror. The chair was still there, just barely visible in the reflection's background. I walked closer to the mirror, squinting. Was it a trick of the frame, some remnant burned into the warped glass? I blinked. The chair was gone. Weird, but I let it go. The next few days, everything seemed normal again. No phantom furniture, no strange reflections. I figured maybe I'd just been tired, or maybe the lighting had played tricks on me. Then, a week later, I saw the chair again. This time, it was more prominent. Centered. Rocking slightly. Still, I turned around, nothing. But this time, when I looked back at the mirror, the chair was still moving. I stood in front of it for what felt like minutes, staring. Watching it gently rock, back and forth, in a room that wasn't supposed to exist. That night, I moved the mirror into my hallway. I didn't want to deal with it anymore. But the next morning, it was back in my bedroom. I assumed I'd moved it in my sleep. I've been known to sleepwalk when stressed, and the move had been overwhelming. I pushed it back out and set up my phone to record video overnight just to be sure. When I checked the footage the next morning, I found something I couldn't explain. At 2:46 a.m. the video glitched. Just static, maybe 5 seconds. When the picture returned, the mirror was back in the room. But I wasn't in the footage. The bed was empty. The room was still. No movement at all. No me. I should been there. I didn't leave, I didn't go anywhere. But it was like I'd been edited out of the recording. I told myself the camera had malfunctioned. That maybe it had paused, or caught a frame from earlier and somehow overlaid it. I'm not a tech expert. But that explanation didn't sit right. Over the next few nights, I tried ignoring it. But each morning, the mirror would be back, always back in the bedroom, always facing the bed. No matter where I placed it the night before, it returned like clockwork. And the room inside the mirror began to change. More furniture appeared. An old bookshelf. A faded rug. A floor lamp with a yellowed shade. It wasn't my room anymore. It was becoming something else. On the 7th day, I woke up to see something new. A figure. Seated in the rocking chair. It was a man, or at least, it looked like one. Dressed in what I could only describe as early 20th century clothes, high collar, suspenders, slacks. His face was hazy, like fogged glass. But I could see his head slowly tilt toward me. I spun around, nothing. The mirror still showed him sitting there. Still rocking. I didn't sleep that night. Or the one after. I moved the mirror to the basement storage room of my building. Locked it in a closet. That should ended it. But that night, I had the most vivid dream of my life. I was standing in a room, not my room, but familiar. The bookshelf, the rug, the lamp. The man in the chair stood now, facing me. I couldn't make out his face, but I felt him staring. Felt something in his gaze. He raised one hand slowly, pointed behind me. I turned around. There was another mirror. My mirror. And in its reflection, I saw myself sleeping in bed. Except I wasn't alone. The man was standing next to my bed, watching me. I woke up screaming. The mirror was back in my room. This time, I didn't try to move it. I covered it with a sheet. I taped the corners down. Tried not to look at it. Days passed. I avoided the mirror like it was poison. I slept on the couch, barely at all. One morning, I passed the bedroom door and noticed the sheet had fallen. I peeked in. The mirror was showing a perfect replica of my room again. Everything the same. Except for one detail. I wasn't in the reflection. Not the me who was standing in the doorway. The bed was made. The lamp was off. The window blinds drawn shut. But no me. I stepped closer, breath catching. Then, I saw him again. The man. Standing where I should been. Closer to the glass now. Just inches from the other side. And this time, he smiled. I reached out, hand trembling, and touched the mirror's surface. Cold. But not like glass. Like water. Like the air on the other side was pulling me in. I yanked my hand back. That night, I bolted the bedroom door shut and tried to sleep on the couch. But at 3:04 a.m., I heard the sound of wood scraping against wood. A chair. Rocking. Coming from behind the door. When I worked up the courage to open it at dawn, the room was empty. But the mirror. The mirror showed something else. A room that was no longer mine. A window with iron bars. A bed frame I didn't recognize. No me. No man. Just the room. Still. Waiting. And then, One morning, I woke up in bed. In the mirror, everything looked normal again. My reflection staring back at me. I hoped maybe it was over. Until I waved. And the reflection didn't. It just stood there. Still. Smiling. And now I don't know which side I'm on anymore.